Welcome to Calf Academy, your source for calf care education.
This module is entitled Fly Control in Calves. It's important. An outline of the fly control module will discuss in depth the problem of flies in calves specifically, some basics of the specific flies we're dealing with that are specifically the problem in calves, and then the implementation of an integrated pest management system for calves. And then lastly, we'll discuss a elim-A-fly, a specific feed additive, as part of the integrated pest management solution. The problem with flies in calves especially is calves harbor more than 100 different species of pathogenic organisms. Studies have linked them to more than 65 human and animal diseases. And flies can also transport the eggs of parasites. Younger animals are more at risk since the stress can interfere with their early weight gain, resulting in negative effects on productivity over their lifetime. Flies are a particular problem in calves because calves live in a confined space often and cannot escape a fly-infested environment versus cattle on a pasture. Flies are attracted by the high sugar content of starter grains. The presence of manure and urine in milk-fed animals is particularly attractive to the flies. And spilled or leaked milk replacer in front of the calves is a productive breeding ground for flies. Fly infestation in the calf area will reduce feed intake, and the flies carry bacteria and diseases, as discussed in the previous slide. The diseases specifically spread by flies are the viral diseases, BVD, bovine herpes virus, and PI3. Bacterial diseases spread by flies are predominantly pink eye and mastitis, but also bacteria scours, typhoid, anthrax, fibrosis, and several of the clostridial diseases. Problem fly basics. If we look at the fly life cycle in general, this is true across the problem species of flies that we're discussing today. A single female can lay 400 to 600 eggs in fresh manure or organic material in her lifetime. Depending on the species of fly and climate conditions, the egg to adult cycle takes 10 to 14 days for house flies and 28 days for stable flies. If you look at the specifics of the fly life cycle, the eggs are about 1 millimeter long, slightly curved and whitish in color. They're detectable to the naked eye, but they're hard to see in manure. The larvae have 3 instar, or stages of development. After the 3 larval stages, emerges a pupa, which is reddish-brown in color and barrel-shaped. From the pupae, they emerge as an adult, and the egg-to-adult life cycle is 10 to 28 days, depending on species and climate conditions. The skin of the larvae is an epidermal layer plus the overlying cuticle, or exoskeleton, which is a hard outer layer. The cuticle, or outer layer, is made up of protein and chitin. The flies that are of concern in the calf are biting flies, such as horn flies and stable flies, and flies that spread disease, face flies and house flies. The biting flies cause chapping and scabbing of the teat, and this creates a fertile breeding ground for mastitis-causing bacteria, especially Staph aureus. Bacteria on the teat skin increases the likelihood that that quarter will become infected with mastitis. 75% of the heifers have been shown pre-lactation to be infected with Staph aureus. Horn flies are responsible for 30 to 50% of all heifer mastitis. Udder damage due to scarring from the fly bites results on average a 10% less milk yield. Non-biting flies don't cause scarring of the teats, however, are major vectors of disease spread. This is due in part to the way they digest food. When a fly wants to digest the feedstuffs and manure, a housefly or a face fly, it lands on the manure and it liquefies with saliva the foodstuffs and then absorbs them with a sponging or sucking type mouth parts. After it does this, then it moves from the animal waste to the eyes or mucosal layers in the animal or the animal's feed, and spreads whatever bacteria is contracted through this sucking activity to the feed or to the sensitive areas of the calf, such as the eyes. When controlling flies, one needs to look at an Integrated Pest Management Program, or an IPM. When looking at an IPM, it takes a multifaceted approach to control flies on an operation, and one needs to focus on this in the calves as well as in the lactating herd. Many integrated pest management systems consider only the lactating herd, not the calves. And calves, as we stated earlier, are a fertile breeding ground for the flies. If you look at the bottom of the integrated pest management triangle, fly control begins with cultural innovation. Cultural innovation of fly populations can be affected by good sanitation or habit change. Next up on the triangle is the physical or mechanical intervention of flies. This can be done through flea lice control methods, screens, and proper clothing. Next up on the triangle is the biological intervention, such as predators or parasites, predator wasps or parasite that control flies through biological means. And then at the top of the integrated pest management triangle are the two forms of chemical intervention. One of those is biorational, which would be repellents, diatomaceous earth, oils, or insect growth regulators, or microbials. And then at the very top of the integrated pest management triangle is the conventional chemical intervention, which are pesticides that actually kill the fly on contact, such as organophosphates. When considering an integrated pest management system for calves, the sanitation aspect is to keep hutches and calf pens clean and well bedded. In warmer climates, where you don't need straw to protect the calves from the draft, you should use inorganic bedding such as sand. Standing water should be eliminated from all calf areas. Spilled feed or spilled milk should be cleaned up. Manure piles should not be near calf rearing areas. Grass should be mowed and weeds should be mowed around the calf housing areas. Predatory wasps can be used to reduce adult fly numbers, and scatterbait or fly traps can be used in calf housing areas. If fly populations become high, pesticides can kill flies on contact without a detrimental effect on the calves. Feed-through larvicides can also be used to control fly populations. A viable feed-through larvicide is an active ingredient that contains chemical compounds which interfere with chitin deposition. These are selective invertebrates that go through developmental stages that require chitin. The first class of compounds discovered that interfere with chitin placement are called benzoylureas. The most commonly used benzoylurea is diflubenzuron. Elim-A-fly is an adpack available for feeding the calves, which contains clarifly. Clarifly is a trade name for diflubenzuron, or the active ingredient in clarifly is diflubenzuron. Elim-A-fly is a daily adpack for calves for continuous feeding during the fly season. It stops the development of horn flies, face flies, and house and stable flies, larvae. It prevents the formation of the fly larvae's exoskeleton. It must be used as part of an integrated pest management program, and it's used with whole milk or milk replacer. Looking visually at how Elim-A-fly works, Elim-A-fly is fed to the calf, it's excreted in the manure, the fly lays its eggs in the manure, the fly eggs hatch. However, with the diflubenzuron or the active ingredient present, the chitin is not placed in the exoskeleton, and the fly dies at this stage of development and never emerges as an adult. The mode of action of Elim-A-fly is added to the milk or milk replacer that is fed to the calf. It passes through the calf's digestive system unaltered. It's excreted in the manure. When the adult fly lays eggs in the manure, the eggs are exposed to the diflubenzuron. When the egg develops through the larval stages, the diflubenzuron interferes with the placement of chitin in the exoskeleton. Without chitin in the exoskeleton, the fly larvae die without developing to the next stage, and therefore do not emerge as adult flies. This specific mode of action of Elim-A-fly, or diflubenzuron, is a tremendous safety factor for its use. It makes it an extremely safe product to use in calf production. because elim-A-fly only affects species that are dependent on chitin for development. This is just arthropods and nematodes. Therefore, elim-A-fly or diflubenzuron does not affect honeybees, predator wasps, or mammals. And because it stops a developmental process necessary for life of the insect, and it stops it completely, there's a low potential for the target species of flies developing resistance to elim-A-fly. And lastly, it's not an organophosphate. Therefore, its cross-species toxicity is very limited, and it's not as highly regulated as organophosphates are. elim-A-fly is available in an 8-pound pail or a 22.05-pound paper bag for large herd use. When using elim-A-fly, you should begin feeding elim-A-fly 30 days before the flies begin to appear, and continue feeding it until cold weather restricts fly activity. The dosage of elim-A-fly as a feed additive is proportional to the animal's body weight. Each animal must receive 0.1 ounces of elim-A-fly feed additive per 100 pounds of body weight, which is the same as 0.1 milligrams of diflubenzuron per kilogram of body weight per head per day. On the Milk Products website is an elim-A-fly feed additive dosage calculator, where you can enter the number of calves you're feeding and their average weight, and it'll tell you how much elim-A-fly to add each day. When looking across the United States, the range of dates when elim-A-fly needs to be added to calf feed is for the upper Northwest, April to October; for the desert Southwest and the Southeast, February to December; for the Midwest to the Mid-Atlantic states, March through November. This concludes this module on fly control in calves.
Thank you for attending this Calf Academy course. If you have follow-up questions, please type your question below, and a Milk Products representative will be in touch.